You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that this happens? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody, we are here for the after show for the Dr. Dan Stern Cardinale versus quote Dr. Kent Hovind. AKA there's some numbers that I put in that thumbnail. I don't know if you guys recognize them. But before we really get started, I want to say that we have a super chat from one Carrie Bronson for $5 who says, "Our void who art about us, hallowed be thy no. Thy vacuum come." Thank you very much. And yes, the void finds your offering acceptable, as it does most offerings, because it's just a void. And Vandalia 1998 for $5 just now says, "I like how my question about native tribes here before the flood made Kent say Egypt was lying about being old and spawned new questions from his response." Yes, that was classic. And his response was completely nonsensical. Yeah. It was just, I have a double standard. That's why it's not a problem. Okay, sure.
Fair enough.
But it's like he thought. It's like he thought that the ages that we know that the Egypt existed at, are just from the documents themselves, from the Egyptian hieroglyphs, as if the ages are there when it's not that way at all.
Mr. Wilford for $5 says, "Love you, Dan. Also sorry for being a demonetizing demon daver."
What does he do?
Mr. Wilford has demonetized a couple of my streams. One was he just randomly pulled out a gun.
That's not allowed.
No.
Mr. Wilford, you silly goose.
Yep. we were doing his Leaving Earth creationism, and then suddenly there's a gun on screen. I'm like, well, there goes that.
Oh.
Who needs money anyways?
How much for that?
I know.
Yeah. Although YouTube has become a little bit less crazy with demonetizing in the last month or two. So,
start back up.
Actually, I just uploaded a video that I think might get demonetized because it has actual footage of botfly larvae being extracted from a cat.
Oh, that's cool. Botflies are awesome.
Well, yeah, they're
nightmare fuel.
Yeah. So basically, I was going on about how, so the Bible actually says that all the insects should have died in the flood. And it actually says it in the verse right before the one that creationists like to quote to say that they didn't need to bring insects. So after pointing out the Bible absolutely requires insects to be on the ark, I talk about the fact that, couldn't Noah have left the botflies off of the ark? And as an example as to why maybe he should have done so, here's a cute little kitten having like inch-long maggots pulled out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So
what do you think of the debate?
Yeah, well, first, what did you think of the debate?
Words failed me a couple of times in that debate. It was
surprising.
There were a few moments where I was genuinely surprised, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, you're not often surprised in a Kent Hovind debate.
No. It's true, right? But I think one of them was that the temperature didn't change. Was one of them.
That was astonishing.
That it wasn't. It was a global flood, but the Earth, like everything, was local to not where the ark was. That was a good one. There were a couple others that I was just like,
the ark gets its own special anti-wave shield.
I don't even remember, but there were 2 or 3 moments I was just like, okay, I guess. Next question. Like there were moments I was genuinely speechless and I didn't know what to say because just the temperature thing, like we're talking about physics and like the fact that he says it expands. And I said, okay, but what about the heat? There's no heat. It's just, this doesn't but that's contradictory. I got nothing.
Yeah. His insistence that things like friction apparently don't heat up water.
Right? I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
I will, you know what? I might have to double check with my high school physics book, but I'm pretty sure friction is friction and it heats things up. And Mr. Wilford for $5 says, Hovind literally said, "I don't believe Walt Brown with regard to his heat, yet he used Walt Brown's model to explain the flood. Pick one." Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
And he actually cited Walt Brown on screen at one point.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things he showed up, it said like it had a citation and it was Walt Brown. The same thing that I cited.
I mean, hey, at least he had a citation. Yep. That's already right there, you're going above and beyond Kent Hovind's like normal level. Because I've sat there with Kent with Bent and tried to look up some of his citations, and it's like to some obscure magazine's physical issue that has no digital archives. I'm just like, okay, sure. Or sometimes one of his sources was, call this guy on the phone. His phone number is on screen. That was one of his sources.
Nice docs.
Did you catch at the end that he told me to call him on the phone and gave his number to everybody?
Oh, he does it all the time.
Yeah, his number is public.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all.
Yes, thank you, David. Oh, make sure everyone hit like, because we got a lot of people viewing who haven't hit liked. But
I'll hit like.
David,
Yep.
what did you think about the
The
debate?
debate went pretty much exactly as I expected. Kent Hovind, Mr. Kent Hovind.
Mhm.
And I am so glad, Dr. Dan, that someone finally called him out on it. So thank you. Thank you so much for saying it like it is. He never really gave any answers to the questions. He just dodged. You brought up a bunch of points about the genetic issues, and he just deflected saying, well, you believe we came from Iraq. You're the one with the issue. So basically, it's a case of he's basically arguing, I know you are, but what am I? That's pretty much what he's doing.
Yep. And did you note that he did in fact say in this debate, he makes the rock argument to make evolutionists look stupid? He knows it's a straw man.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
he said
he
that
does.
literally.
I mean, honestly, I would respond with, well, you believe we came from dirt, proved into existence by God. But I don't know. That being said, there is one thing that he said that I kind of wish you would have hammered him on. And he said that before the flood, all the animals were vegetarian.
Yeah, now.
I think I think what you should have done, what I would have, one of the questions I had that unfortunately James didn't ask, is okay. We have fossilized stuff that should have come from the flood. We have fossils of animals eating each other. How does he explain that?
Yeah.
Yep.
And bonus points because creationists use those same fossils to say rapid burial had to be a global flood.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it's well. Also, here's one thing. He talked about the 11-foot oyster. That's not even a fossil. I know exactly what that claim is, and there's this picture that all the creationists use of this guy lying back on this sort of oval-shaped structure. That's a conglomerate rock. It's just a rock.
Yeah.
It's not a fossil at all.
See,
So you know what? As we're on that topic, aside from clams aren't even fossils, it's one of those arguments that's just so dumb, and Kent knows it's wrong. He's been corrected on this before. Hard and Raw's done it, I know that. But like, okay, so first, brachiopods, they close when they die, and unsurprisingly, creationists can't tell the difference. Clams bury themselves and won't open up when they're buried because, duh.
Pressure.
Bird.
We have a $5 super chat from
Bird.
Gavin Lockhart who says, I like Kent Hovind and I'm a young Earth creationist, but this debate was not his finest moment. North Korea is a great country, peaceful and prosperous. Yes, all hail the glorious leader.
that was one of the moments that left me speechless.
Yeah, what do you even say?
Have you ever been in an evolutionary biology class? And the answer ended up being no, but then he says, have you ever been in a communism class?
Well, tell you what,
What?
when Dan starts to make his life mission to either critique or promote communism, now we have a good question to ask him. Until then,
my favorite thing about that was he said, they teach them in Russia and China. I'm like, no, Russia hasn't been communist for 30 years.
Here's a fun bit of trivia, though. Who is the president of North Korea? Oh, sorry, yeah, North Korea. Who's the president of North Korea?
I don't really
I
know.
don't know.
Kim Il-sung.
Oh, is his technical title president?
He is still the president, despite having been dead for like 60 years.
Oh my God.
Yep, he's the eternal leader, I
Yeah,
think.
dictatorship.
Yeah, he is.
Oh,
He
he's
is
the-
their eternal leader and the president of North Korea, and he always will be the president of North Korea.
As long as
I
North
know
Korea
that.
exists.
His son and grandson have only ever acted like
Right.
in his stead, because of course he's going to come back because he was born on top of a holy mountain after a rainbow appeared and doves came down or something. Yeah.
Interesting.
But anyway, that has nothing to do with Ken Hovind. That was just a fun little bit of trivia about how crazy North Korea gets.
Yeah.
Anyway, back again, there is a question that I wanted to ask you in my stream, but I kind of forgot to ask it. And I know we're kind of getting away from the debates, but I do want to ask you a question about virality. Why is it that there is sometimes a large gap between the time a virus appears and the time that it becomes a pandemic? Because we know that HIV evolved around 1900, broke away from SIV, and didn't become a pandemic until 80 years later. So why does it seem that there's an incubation period followed by a sudden burst of activity, so to speak?
That's a unique one because it's like for some forms of HIV, it's depending on the form, it's 6 months to 10 years until you get like immunosuppressive symptoms. Like there's an acute phase, and then it goes away for a while, and there's really no symptoms for half a year, 5 years, even 10 years. But in that time span, you can still spread it. So what ends up happening is you have the virus circulating. Very few people are actually experiencing symptoms of it, but it's circulating through the population, and you're just lighting a bunch of fuses. And then those fuses are all going to start, you reach the detonator all at the same time, kind of like, 5 to 10 years down the road. So you end up with this explosion of a pandemic seemingly out of nowhere across 3 continents initially. And then you kind of go do the detective work backwards, and you end up finding out that this virus was actually circulating. Hello, Dakota. Great to see you. And you end up finding. So, well, just one second. Let me just finish the HIV thing. So you end up with this virus kind of making, if you can picture a phylogenetic tree, right? And you can kind of gray out a bunch of that tree of like, we don't know it's there. But instead of the 2009 swine flu pandemic, the H1N1 pandemic, it was about 2 to 3 months between when it originated and when we noticed it. But because of that lag time between severe illness with infection and when it appears with HIV, it was like, you have that spread for decades before it
Which
hits that critical mass. Yeah.
So basically, from what I understand, it's basically a domino effect where one thing leads to another and leads to another, and it goes through and we end up
across
with the
continents.
pandemic. So yeah, kind of like what happens right now with SARS-CoV too. I think there were a couple papers published before the pandemic warning us that maybe there's something that we should be taking a look at.
All right, guys, I have a couple super chats real quick, and then we're going to get to Dakota's thoughts. So first, we have from Mr. Wilford for $5. So when do you retire early, given how you clearly got decimated? Ignore Kent's non-answers, because it was an easy win. Flex emoji with the little wobbly smile face 3 times. So when's your retirement party?
I mean, I've lost count. So I mean, I debated Kent before. So it's twice I've been forced into early retirement by Kent. There's some other guy I've talked to a couple times. Forget his name, but he's forced
Mr.
me
Batman.
to early retirement 3 or 4 times. So I mean, at this point, I don't even know why I keep coming back. I'm like it's like whack-a-mole, right? I come up, I immediately get forced back into retirement. I don't know.
Yeah, also, I have a question.
Well, hold on. There's another super chat. It's for $2 from Mr. Wilford, which also says, also, what did Dan think of Kent's anti-vax thing?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm not surprised that Contovid, excuse me, pardon my French, is a anti-vaxxer. I am not surprised at all.
Oh, I've known he's an anti-vaxxer for a long time.
100% completely unserious, unsurprised also that Kent is an anti-vaxxer. I don't know. It's like I was like, okay, you're just, here we are. It's kind of illustrates what I'm talking about though, right? Like if you are like the thing I started with, that like, why argue about something as dumb as the Ark? Like it's a myth. It's not meant to be taken literally. People can believe what they want to believe. That's fine. But if you're gonna go out there and claim that this is something that's literally true, and you're gonna go out and try to convince people that it's literally true, then what you're doing is you're short-circuiting your ability to think critically. And it makes you susceptible to all kinds of other conspiracy theories and hoaxes and scams. And anti-vax is from, like, the modern anti-vax movement from day one was a scam. That was the Andrew Wakefield, the famous MMR vaccine and autism paper, the one that was retracted, that cost Wakefield his medical license.
Yeah.
That whole thing was a scam because Wakefield was marketing a competing vaccine, right? It was a money grab from day one. And when you train your brain to publicly believe and promote things that are obviously like laughably, like not even like unsincere, but just silly, right? Like forget right versus wrong. Like it's just silly. And if you train your brain to like be susceptible to that kind of thing, then you are then susceptible for, like you're the mark for con artists, right? That are trying to sell you their prepper survival kit for when the feds swoop in with their COVID vaccine.
Or their fancy salt lamps.
Bonkers thing. Right. Like that is what it is like we have like critical thinking architecture in our brains. And brains are not, you have to work on it because brains are first rationalizing machines and second critical thinking machines.
Yeah.
But the critical thinking ability is there and you have to work at it. If you work at undermining it, you are susceptible to a whole bunch of other things that are BS. And anti-vax propaganda is one of those things. So that's completely unsurprising to me. And that's why it's important. And I know I've preached this to everyone in this show already, so this is not going to be new to anyone
no worries
here, but people listening, people watching, like this is why I beat this drum of like, yeah, who cares how old the world is? Does that hurt anybody? No. But the ability to train your brain to reject the evidence and believe it, that is affirmatively harmful because it makes everyone who believes it susceptible to all these other things that actually have tangible costs to society, right? So that's why I'm so engaged in and invested in this.
Yeah. We also have 3 more super chats. So for $2 from Anamorphic Mind, we have I was not prepared for that. Ken Hovind, 2019. I remember that quote. Did you see that? Did everyone here see that debate?
Oh yeah, the one Conspiracy Cats.
It was with Conspiracy Cats. And Conspiracy Cats, he's bringing out some pretty basic like genetic stuff like, hey, what about ERVs that are shared in common but cross taxa? What reason could there possibly be for inactive viruses to be shared across taxa, if not because of a common ancestor that was infected? And Kent's like, well, I wasn't prepared to talk about that. It's just like, dude, you're having a discussion about the evidence for evolution. What did you think was going to happen?
I have something to criticize Dan on. Dan, you should have talked more about genetics.
I know. I mentioned the genetics thing and then I let it slide, and I did that for 2 reasons. One is James really wanted to keep it focused on the nuts and bolts of the arc, and I wanted to respect that rather than focus on like the downstream things. Like, let's keep it focused on the nuts and bolts. Actually, there's 3 reasons. So that was reason number 1. Reason number 2 is we were talking about the nuts and bolts of the arc, like at what temperature could it combust, and do you sufficiently diffuse the heat from these fountains of the deep to prevent it from reaching that temperature? And things like the waves and the flexing and everything. And Kent just was not interested in addressing any of those points. So I was interested in just saying, you didn't address this. Can we just keep going back to that? Because Kent would do his thing. And so that's reason number 2. And then reason number 3, I know the openings were short. We talked beforehand very briefly, James and I, via email, that Kent wanted to keep things short. So I said, sure, we'll make it quick. So I know those numbers all went by in a blip that I had for like the genetic stuff in the intro. But the point I was hoping to get across was that it's not like the creationist math is not like a little bit off. It's off by like 5 orders of magnitude off.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
Crazy.
And if Ken just wants to let me say that and then not dispute it at all, fine.
Yeah, I mean, hey, take what you get. Yeah. Also, we have for $4.99. Sorry, I do want to get to people, but I also have to get to super chats because they paid for it. You guys are here. You guys aren't paying me.
This is capitalism.
Yeah. I mean, look.
Yes.
I'm not an anti-capitalist. If people are going to pay me to do things like say things online, I'm going to do it. Unless it's... I mean, I do have some standards. There's some things that you won't get me to say just by super chatting. But none of these are that. Kent, this is from Tyler West for $4.99 US. He says, Kent did not even come close to answering my question about the BTUs and methane. Even a wraparound window wouldn't help with 16,000 animals on board. Yeah, that's true.
And by the way, thank you. I alluded to that because I saw that flip by in the chat. And that was a great point that I didn't even bring up. And then the question came up again, and he went down this bonkers like wraparound window rabbit hole, which like what? It was
Yeah, it was crazy talk. And for $5 from Mr. Archaeopteryx, Hovind thinks chemtrails are a real thing too. Yeah,
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Look, it's hard to find a non-alien conspiracy theory that Kent Hovind hasn't at least given serious, like hasn't said is at least plausible. Like chemtrails, I think he's talked about HARP before as like the weather control, which no.
It's the Alaska thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the hush money on chemtrail things because I was in the aerospace industry. So if chemtrails were a thing, I deserve some hush money for that.
I mean, either get your hush money or be a whistleblower, right, man? It's one or the other.
I second that. Okay, like when I was in grad, the thing I did was viral evolution, and then I turned around and participated in the Pfizer vaccine trial. So like, where is my conspiracy money?
Oh,
Putting in work. Where is my money for this conspiracy theory?
You don't get the money because the vaccine version you got had the broken microchip, so they can't track you to get the money to you. I know, right?
They didn't even have the
I gotta get the
microchip in it.
booster. I get it. That's why they're doing the. I gotta get the booster. If they do a booster, then I can. Then I'll get the.
There you go.
I'm downloading I'm downloading Angry Birds for my Fragey right now.
And I will say that I'm kind of mad that I'm not yet magnetic.
Right?
I mean,
Magnetic thing is
You got a faulty one then.
By the way, we
I
have a
think
$2.
that's probably,
Oh, sorry.
that's probably my favorite claims for that it makes you magnetic.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, and I do want to talk about that in a second. But we have $2 from Josiah Hansen, who says Dan did even better than Bill Ludlow. Total domination. Bill, that's pretty high praise because I don't know if you've seen the Bill Ludlow debate. It was brutal.
I don't think I've seen that one, but I'm gonna Google it now. Is it on YouTube?
It is on YouTube.
That was on Human Evolution.
Yeah, it
I
was.
would love to get Kent on that. That would be fun.
Did you see the Kent Hovind debate with King Crocoduck?
It was a 3-parter. You have to set aside a day. It's like a 7-hour debate when all is said and done.
It's so brutal.
Oh yeah.
This is where we learned that Kent Hovind thinks that burning logs in your fire is an example of mass energy conversion. Yeah,
could you explain that?
He thinks that E equals mc squared is an equation that has some relevance to setting wood on fire.
Yeah, wait. I have something to say though about the openings.
Go ahead.
My opening was entirely the Bible says so, and that is why I'm right.
It really was.
That is all.
It really was. It was.
Yeah, it was entirely that.
Yeah, we were totally playing bingo with the Kent Hovind stuff.
Yes, we were.
I wish
we knocked off like 4 or 5 bingos.
You were playing bingo.
I was playing bingo.
Nice.
Yep.
I was playing bingo. I called Pascal's wager when he dropped it in the video. I was playing bingo with y'all.
But you know what? I should correct myself there. We never got.
You were using the other bingo sheet.
One off.
For $5 from Mr. Wilford, he says, until you give me your social security number, your credit card number, and 3 wacky numbers on the back. Oh, and the 3 wacky numbers on the back. You never took part in the conspiracy, Vax idiot. That's the problem. You haven't given them all. You haven't given Colton all your money, or sorry, numbers. Oh. Mr. Wilford says, "Rip Bill Ludlow." All right. So, I gotta say that there was one thing that I wanted to point out, though, to Dan. This is a very harsh criticism, so brace yourself.
Oh, yeah, what did I screw up? Because I was talking way outside my field tonight, so what did I mess up?
It is not a minor physiological difference between brachiopods and clams. They are in different phyla.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah.
It is significant.
Yeah. There is a superficial resemblance.
Superficial resemblance, right.
But
my meaning was that to the untrained eye, you might confuse them. But yeah, they're not
fair.
even. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really not. If you know enough about the anatomy of, say, a brachiopod or a bivalve.
This versus that, and they fit. One of them fits in like this, and the other one, right? It's very different. Yeah.
They are very different. Yes. Once you actually know like the basics of either bivalve or brachiopod anatomy, you can realize like, oh, hey, no, this cannot be a clam or whatever. If you have one shell, maybe you might make the mistake, but even then, the sort of proximal end of the shells for both groups are also very different. Because brachiopods have a weird sort of like bulging end to them. And yeah, anyway. So that's my harsh criticism is that you can't say animals in different phyla are only a little bit different.
Earlier,
I mean, unless they're from
By the way,
very early in the phylum. That's all.
Yeah, I do want to actually make an apology real quick for calling Kent the thing that I did. I know I shouldn't have used it. I got it from Aaron Ra, who changed the E to a U. I do apologize that for making that mistake. I understand that some people don't like using that word, but I was corrected on it, and I do want to make an apology for that.
Fair enough. I will say, though, that he has done some things to earn that particular sobriquet. For instance, I just went through his complaint against the United States government and the judge in his criminal case and the investigator in his criminal case and both prosecuting attorneys and his defense attorney, who he all sued. He sued all of those things, seeking a bit over $500 million.
Attorney.
Yeah, he sued his defense attorney, claiming that his defense attorney and the prosecutors and the judge and the investigator and the United States government all took a cut of the money that was taken from his safe and a conspiracy to get money from him for themselves for personal enrichment and also to ruin his reputation and his soul winning because according to him, at least according to the implication, because he says only Satan would want to do this, and then he said that they did this. So by obvious implication, he thinks that they're all working for Satan.
They're working for Satan. Yeah.
Yep.
This is in the legal complaint he filed with the court. But in that, numerous times, he mentions his kids. He names two of them repeatedly and talks about how his relationship was ruined with them. Talks about Eric and Marlissa. But you know who he doesn't mention one time, except for stating in one part that he had 3 kids? Kent Jr.
Oh.
The special needs kid, who he never talks about. Yeah, he just ignores that guy. Doesn't talk about how he lost his relationship with that guy. Doesn't talk about how that guy never calls him, but he doesn't.
Yeah, I will say that Kent Irvin has done a lot to promote atheism and leaving religion. The problem with young Earth creationism is that it is refuted by literally every fact in science. Every single field of science refutes it.
Yeah.
We got that's something which is both a super chat and a terrible pun.
Yes, we got for $5 from Carrie Bronson, super fish with FISH, superficial resemblance. Sorry, I'll see myself out. Very nice.
I love you. I love you. Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Keep going.
Oh. So Time Lord in the chat said, give him the $500 million on the condition that he builds a working arc. Yeah, that would be fun to see. I would love to see a working arc.
I would love to see someone try to do that. Was that the one in Kentucky? Wait, wasn't the Arc Park leaking from rain?
It leaks from rain, and it's only half an arc at best because the back half is a regular building.
Right, it's
And
just a
only the
concrete
front
slab.
part is the facade of arcness.
Okay.
Oh, and
I have-
even the
I have
facade?
things to say on this topic.
Real quick though, even the facade has steel braces to keep on the joints between the wooden braces and the struts that are holding up the hull. So between the hull and the wooden struts, there are steel braces because they couldn't actually get that to work with just wood.
Yeah, because well, okay, they had iron pins.
Oh, then why is he using steel and not iron?
But what we call steel is just highly refined iron with different degrees of carbon in it.
Mr. Wilford.
Yep, we have a $5 super chat from Mr. Wilford who says, also, it should be pointed out, moon pools are not sufficient for tsunamis. Modern ships have them, yet still capsize when they meet rogue waves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is,
Yeah, go ahead, Dakota.
Yeah, this is a distinction that is kind of lost if you aren't in engineering, but like the difference between flex stress and the stress that you gain from having moon pools. Yes, Kent is sort of right that if you have those moon pools in, like the total flex isn't quite as much, but the existence of holes in a structure does increase strain because you have less material in there, and there's whole tables. If you do mechanical engineering, there are whole tables you have to end up looking at for what's the size of a hole, where it's located on the axes, and that all factors into if you put any gap in a structure, you increase the stress and strain of that structure.
And if you look,
and for what it, well, go ahead.
and if you look at every
Yeah.
picture Kent showed of the moon pools in the arc, they were all center line where
Center
the
line on the
keel
keel.
is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't cut a hole in the keel.
Mm-mm.
You're gonna break your ship.
Mm-mm.
Got
That
ship.
ship's gonna because
All
that
of the strength.
because and look, I did like 20 minutes of research on ship design after I read the Wikipedia article and a couple other things on the Wyoming. I did like a few minutes worth of research on ship design. So like I went into this debate like as prepared as I was going to be, considering I'm in the middle of teaching a 4-week summer class right now, and it's like 3 hours a day for 4 days a week. It's like not a lot of time I'm able to put into this. But even I know that you don't cut a hole in the keel of a ship
Mhm.
because you lose the structural integrity of that end-to-end support. And just for talking about flexion in a wooden ship, if the keel is the rigid part, so if you cut a hole in that, you're
just gonna break it in half.
make it worse.
Yeah, you're gonna break it in half.
That makes the problem worse, not bad.
Oh, by the way, Rodin Still Last Name says, love to hear that Kent's divorce hearing lasted 6 minutes. Yeah, Kent puts the story of his divorce hearing in the lawsuit, and according to him, it went like this. It lasted 6 minutes, and they were divorced at that point. Then, on the way out of the courtroom, he asked his now ex-wife if she would marry him again. She said no, and then never spoke another word to him to this day. Which, yikes.
Can we go back to that absolutely poop section on the flood and tsunamis for a second? Can we just appreciate what went on there? Because we're talking about the entire crust of the world contracting, right? That's what is hypothesized here. So we're talking,
which would
Christmas
speed up
Day
the planet,
tsunami.
by the way.
That was another problem that I didn't even get to. That he said you would speed up the planet. I said, okay, your waves just got worse. I didn't even get to that because the rest of this was so bonkers that he's saying you have this literally global contraction of the Earth's crust, right? So you're talking orders of magnitude worse than the Christmas Day tsunami, than the Fukushima earthquake tsunami, right? You're talking orders of magnitude more powerful than that. But they're not going to affect the boat over here. And in fact, those tsunamis are not even global phenomena. And
and it's on a boat that is in shallow enough water that it can still use anchor lines to help direct itself.
There is nothing about that makes sense. And then he has the nerve to say, well, we didn't get the tsunami in Louisiana because you're on the other side of a continent.
Yeah, there's this thing called land that blocks it. Weird.
There was, even if the tsunami was 10 times higher, there's a mountain range in between.
Yeah, like living here in Arizona, I don't fear tsunamis. You know why? Because I'm surrounded by mountains.
Mountains.
Oh,
right,
living here.
But then he's like, did California get it? Did Chile get it? Yes. The entire Pacific got it. Alaska got it.
Dapper. Where I live in California, I don't fear tsunamis, despite the fact that I'm only, a 2-hour drive from LA because of traffic. It's closer to an hour and a half because of distance. But, I'm not afraid of tsunamis, despite being in lowlands, because there's a mountain range in the way.
Yeah.
The tsunamis won't reach me. It's like Kent doesn't understand land is a thing that breaks up waves.
He neither understands how land works or how the ocean works. Is basically what I'm getting.
Fault lines work, because fault lines aren't located on just one chunk of the ocean. Given that fault lines are around the edge of every continent, and in a flood there are no more continents left because they're all covered by water.
Right. That was another one I didn't have time to, because again, it's the BS asymmetry principle, right? It's like there's 40 things that are wrong, and you could address the first 3 of them in the time that's allotted. Right? It's just,
it's nutty.
It was. I mean, honestly, like I said at the top, I was astonished by the level of just bonkers, and I feel like they were largely ad hoc claims. It was just well, let's throw this out there. Let's throw this out there. That's what it felt like to me. Did everyone else get that impression?
Oh yeah, it was scattershot.
Dan, what in creationism isn't an ad hoc explanation?
Fair.
fair, but many of them are from 20 years ago. So this felt like
and yeah,
this genuinely felt like this was not something he had thought of until I said it, which seems weird. Considering this man has been a professional doing this for what, 40 years? 30? I don't know how long.
Well, one thing is, do you count the jail time as still time doing it?
Well,
Wait, can I just get
arguments before and after. So
can I just get
arguments?
can I just like can people just appreciate the taxpayer thing? Can people just appreciate that whole aside that we had?
Yeah,
Because I mean, I thought that was pretty fun.
Look,
that was funny.
I appreciate that to a new degree after having gone through Kent Hovind's complaint, where he
That was
told
funny.
his side of the story. Which, by the way, if you want to see that, I think either the most recent 2 or like maybe most recent like 3 or 4. I don't know. If you look at my playlist, Dapper on other channels, a couple of the most recently added videos are me and Cheshire Vic reading through his initial complaint, which gives his side of what happened at Dinosaur Adventureland, and it's let's just say this: the judge who dismissed the case with prejudice, by the way, so he can't refile. The judge who dismissed this case with prejudice described the case as frivolous and delusional.
Dinosaurian looks working for you, Dapper.
Yep.
Yeah.
I linked Cheshire's channel in the
Thank
chat because
There
you
you
should
go.
go subscribe to it, you losers.
My favorite part of that whole thing was after I just it was like we're having a debate, we're kind of going at it. Mostly it was about ARC stuff, but there were a couple elbows thrown. I mean, in fairness, let's be honest. I threw the first elbow right off the bat. I own that. He deserved it because the doctor thing is BS. Right. Like don't BS me with that, okay? Like we're gonna address that.
You're telling me.
I threw the first elbow. I can take an elbow, that's fine. But my favorite part of that whole thing with the taxes was I did it, threw the elbow, like we move on, and then James brings it back up after. It's like,
Whoops.
that made it for me. Is that James like, oh, let's talk about taxes some other time. I was like, all right, thanks for reminding everybody.
I want to see I want to see if James ever puts up a sovereign citizenship debate on his channel.
Well, actually, I've been thinking about
It'll be less garbage than some of the other stuff he has.
You got to watch out because you get into like white supremacist militias once you get into the sovereign citizen stuff. So you end up going down that rabbit hole, and you can have someone on that channel and all of a sudden they like pull a curtain and there's like a swastika flag in the background. Like that can happen real fast if you're not careful.
I mean, he already did have to hide one of his live chats because it was flooded with actual members of wannabe members of the German Workers' Socialist Party. Yeah, let's go with that.
I see. People that worked at Krupp. Nifty.
Yeah, I think we have enough euphemisms in there that people can get it. But
Godwin, party too.
so actually, there is one debate that I mentioned in my last debate on modern day debate that I would like to have. I want to message James about it because I would like to have the solar theology debate. Have you ever heard of this thing?
No, I haven't.
So it's this kind of bonkers idea that Christianity was based on reinterpretations of Mithraism and Egyptian polytheism, and that it's based on where the sun goes in the zodiac at different points in the year, and it's all just complete nonsense. It doesn't
All
even
theology is solar theology.
Yeah, that sounds like bullshit.
Yeah, it is. But the thing is, my thing is like, look, there are ways that you can criticize Christianity, but if your starting point is absolute crazy talk, why do you think that anyone should listen to you? This is complete no historians agree with you. No one, whether Christian or not, right? You can find as anti-Christian a historian as you want, and they're not going to agree with you on this. In fact, even astronomers don't agree with them because they get the astronomy wrong in their astronomy-based nonsense.
Yeah, it's but let's just put it this way. A history book written by, say, I don't know, Richard Carrier, is something that I would consider on the same level as a book written by, say, I don't know, Ken Ham.
And it's still better than solar theology.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, so Tyler West asks a good question. How come the tigers scared off all the kangaroos and other marsupials, but the lambs, goats, and cattle were just fine? And so here's another thing. There are right now European feral kangaroo populations that are doing just fine. Marsupials can survive in like Eurasia They're doing it right now. There's no biological reason that at least some marsupials from Australia wouldn't do just fine anywhere that they could have spread to from Turkey besides Australia.
Emus do.
Yeah.
I had neighbors who raised emus just fine in Alabama.
Actually, there's a wild population of rheas, which, granted, not marsupials, but they're restricted in the same way that emus are to Australia to South America. So why didn't the rheas ever make it their way to Europe? Because right now, they're doing great in Germany. The Germans can't get rid of them.
It's almost like the field of biogeography works. It's weird.
I have a joke. Scheiße, we've been invaded by all the Argentinians. It's like
Andrew coming for $2 says, Dan, sex shuffles genes, not bases. Is genetic entropy still bunk?
Oh, wait, hang on, Dan. Sex shuffles genes, not bases. I mean, genetic entropy is always bunk. Genetic entropy is the best, worst argument. There's nothing correct about it. There's literally nothing correct about it. I mean, I will literally talk to anybody about, well, I won't talk to Nazis, and I won't talk to, like, you know.
Oh, you said it, Dan.
Like,
you're supposed to use the euphemism.
Dan, we were trying to avoid that word, you fool.
I will talk to almost everybody. I won't talk to members of the Nationalist Socialist Party.
German Workers' Party.
The German Workers' Party. I apologize. I won't. I have standards, but like when it comes to genetic entropy, like, you know, bring it. If anybody wants to like come on and tell me that genetic entropy is real, like email me, creationmythchannel@gmail.com. Like, we can have a conversation about it. I like to have about hour-long conversations with people, and you know, let's talk about it, because there is no scenario in which genetic entropy makes sense. The population genetics are fantasy land. It's incredible. It's like maybe genetics in Narnia works that way, but it doesn't on Earth.
On that topic of genetic entropy, I don't know if you saw the debate between AJ and Neff, but Neff in that debate was using one of those the velocity tracks that if they were human they would have to be 9 feet tall. He said they were 9 feet tall, and yeah, well, we became shorter because of genetic entropy.
Goodness.
See, genetic entropy is one of those terms now that you try to, like, if you have if it's like the topic, you can get into the nuts and bolts, and it's trivially easy to show why it's wrong. But if it's not the topic, people just throw it out. Like Ken's alluded to it. He talked about, something like he alluded to it, just a glancing blow, but he alluded to genetic entropy. And it's one of those things, it's like one of those buzzwords like epigenetics, the creation is just like, oh, and that helps me. And it's like, that's off topic. We're not going to do it. But like, we could do an hour on why you're wrong on that. And it's just one of those things now that's kind of in the ether. And like, what I was recently told, though, and this made me really happy, is I was talking about this on Reddit because I got into all this on the R Debate Evolution subreddit. And yeah, Dakota, Reddit alums, right? And somebody on Reddit complained about me saying that when you Google genetic entropy, I'm like the first 3 things that pop up. And like why it's wrong. So like my misrepresentations of Sanford's argument are the first thing that people find when you Google genetic entropy, and I cannot express how happy that makes me.
So
good.
We do have a follow-up from Andrew coming. I'm not sure if it changes anything, but it says, I meant that if recombination only shuffles genes, not individual mutations, is genetic entropy still wrong?
Yeah, because like, okay, just quick review. Things that genetic entropy requires. 1, all alleles, genotypes, however you want to phrase it, all genetic situations have a constant, fixed, absolute effect on fitness, right? It's not context dependent. It's not based on your environment. It's not based on whether a predator is present or absent. It's a constant effect. That's number 1. Number 2 is that they have to accumulate, not necessarily at a constant rate. Sanford implies that they harmful mutations accumulate at a constant rate, but they have to accumulate, like they can't slow down. But if you accept the premise that they have a fixed fitness value, then the future distribution of potential mutations is changed every time a mutation occurs. If a bad mutation occurs, and Sanford claims virtually all mutate, that's Dr. John Sanford who came up with this idea. in his book Genetic Entropy and the
A
Mystery of the
real
Genome.
doctor.
A real
Oh, yeah.
legit. He's a plant geneticist. He has legit
Wait.
credentials. Legit doctor, Dr. John Sanford. And he says the way he frames the argument is that you have not necessarily a linear but a constant ongoing accumulation. That's not possible because as harmful mutations occur, if every mutation has a fixed cost, then every time a bad mutation occurs, you remove that from the pool of bad mutations, and the reverse mutation enters the pool of mutations that can happen in the future. So these harmful mutations occur at a lower frequency as they accumulate, and you end up reaching equilibrium. Third thing, the whole idea of harmful mutations accumulating from a baseline assumes an optimal starting point. Creationists have that. Evolution does not. Evolution does not have an optimal starting point. So the framing of the argument in that context begs the question right off the bat. So, I mean, there's 3 reasons right off the bat why genetic entropy is wrong. Doesn't matter how recombination works. Everything about it is wrong. Like,
I have
it's wrong.
a couple things. One is I'm still seeing that we have almost 40 people in here who haven't hit like. Now it's a little bit closer to 30. So
How
still,
dare they?
guys, come on, hit like. It really does help out. But also,
No, like, seriously, like, this is, come on.
You will
Like,
all
if
be
you're
sent
telling
to
me
a
you're sitting
penal
here
world.
hate watching this, give me a break. Like the stream.
hey, look, if you're hate watching it, give me a dislike. I want to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
But Carrie Bronson says for $5, it is rumored that if you look in a mirror and say genetic entropy out loud 3 times, Dan will appear behind you and hit you with agar squares.
It's true, except it's not petri dishes that I'm going to hit you with. What I'm actually going to hit you with is who's the first author? It was a Bull paper. It was a J.J. Bull paper, but he wasn't the first author. But it was called. I'm going to smack you with the paper, and it's called. Hang on, I'm going to look up the paper. It's a J.J. Bull paper. It has to do with mutagenesis of bacteriophages, and it's called Experimental Evolution Under a High Imposed Mutation Load. Adaptation obscures the load. And I'm gonna appear and smack you with that paper because it disproves genetic entropy.
Yeah, guy in a chair says.
By the way, I will say, I'm sorry, read the super chat first. And then
Oh no, it wasn't a super chat. But I just want to say, guy in a chair says dislikes also help too. It's true, actually. According to the algorithm, dislikes and likes are identical.
I'd like to say that Dan's Jeff Goldblum impression was quite good.
See, it's funny that it was Jeff Goldblum because most people will say David Schwimmer is what most people say. Yeah.
So Andrew
Yeah.
Cumming asks, does Mueller's ratchet still not occur based on what I said above about recombination?
Does Muller's ratchet not occur based on what Muller's ratchet is a thought thing about sexual reproduction. It doesn't apply to populations that do recombination, which is every population, even asexual haploids do recombination. So Muller's ratchet doesn't apply. It's like Haldane's dilemma. It's a theoretical thing in like this, spherical chicken in a vacuum kind of population, but under real like situations, it doesn't happen.
Aren't both of those from the 1920s?
They are, coincidentally, yes, they are both from the early 20th century, before we knew a lot of stuff. Like that DNA was the molecule of inheritance, or that DNA is a double helix, or how the genetic code works, or that neutral theory is a thing. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we didn't know when those ideas were developed. And so what the purpose of these ideas was that, hey, here's a theoretical situation in which a specific outcome will happen. Let's look at natural populations and see how that outcome is not happening, and then use our theoretical situation as a baseline for understanding how those populations are evolving. Like, they're not actually things that, like Muller's ratchet, the reason that Muller's ratchet is useful is because it provides an entryway into the question, how did sexual reproduction evolve? And what would select for that?
I'd like to apologize. Haldane's dilemma is apparently dated to the 50s.
Oh, no.
Well, roughly.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's part of, it's in the neighborhood with the modern synthesis people, which was 40s-ish. And sure, it develops into the 50s, but by the time you had people starting to talk about neutral theory, then Haldane's dilemma goes away. You also have parallel evolution, and recombination invalidates Haldane's dilemma. For people
I just didn't want to misconstrue the 20 years switch.
No, you're right. I just want to just for people who are not like read about biology all the time, Haldane's dilemma is the idea that you have populations that are obviously evolving in complex ways, and you can only have selection for one or a very small number of traits at a time. Because if you select for trait A, right, all the individuals with A, they might have trait B or they might not. So you can't simultaneously select for trait A or trait B. And the solution to that dilemma is recombination. If trait A evolves over here and trait B evolves over here randomly, right, through mutation, their offspring are going to mate with each other, right, as either of those beneficial traits propagate through the population. Their offspring will mate, and then you'll have recombination and end up with those two traits together. That combined with the fact that Haldane was operating under a paradigm where most of the genome was like functional and selectable, and we now know that that's not the case. So that's yeah. Sorry, I'm nerding out. I'll stop.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's why we have you on here, is to nerd about
Yeah.
out about genetic stuff.
I like that I'm the designated genetics nerd. I appreciate that. So
I mean,
thank you.
Yeah.
You are a professor with a degree in it, so you know that kind of makes you the guy.
I mean, it's kind of my job
Yeah,
to explain this stuff.
yeah. So you should have expected that was going to happen.
Excuse me.
Role. That's fine.
I'd like to change our topic, please.
What?
Yeah, because there is one thing I'd like to talk about, which was when Kent brought up Mount Ararat and everything wrong there.
Oh yeah, that was dumb.
There's so much.
I'm pretty.
By the way,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I have to get going soon, but
alright.
before I do, one thing that I kind of wish that would be brought up is the issues of the meteorology, how it doesn't even work. You can't get the storm system. And if you're interested in hearing about the meteorological issues, go to my channel and listen to my interview with Maddie, who is who actually is a meteorologist, and we spoke a little bit about how storms form and why you can't even get it off the map. You can't even get that. So I think Maddie did a fantastic job explaining why that doesn't even work. You can't even get it off the ground, literally.
Maddie is also the dungeon master for the D&D campaign that streams to YouTube every other week, Guns, Magic, and Steel. And that is, again, on Cheshire Vic's channel. We do that with TD Lane. I'm in it. Number of people. Gutsy Gibbon is in it.
I'm sure the answer is yes, but I hope that's a direct reference to the book, right?
Guns, Germs, and Seals? Yes, it absolutely is.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Good.
Yeah. I actually am the one who came up with that name, and I can confirm 100% that yes, it is a direct reference to Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Anyway.
What would be the equivalent wordplay to make a campaign based on the book The Coming Plague by Laurie Garrett?
Why do you have to make a wordplay? Just have a campaign about a plague.
Because dad jokes.
Okay, that's fair. The Coming Zombie Plague, just have it about necromancers.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, that
The
works.
cumin
That actually worked for me.
plague and about spice trading.
Yeah, the cumin plague.
Fight trade, what legitimately brought about disease from many areas.
That's see, Dakota, that is the type of god-awful wordplay I am here for. That's what I'm talking about.
So, by the way, Mr. Wolford says, for the record, James has been keeping the debate open for an hour after the debate ended. Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed a number of debates I've clicked on his channel. I'm like, ooh, this is a long video. And then I realize, oh, like an hour before the video actually ends, I'm just clicking off because I don't care about whatever the after stuff is that he has. Because it's always like, we have like a GoFundMe or something. And I'm just like, okay, that's great.
Whatever.
Like, no shade on having a GoFundMe. I'm just not going to listen to an hour-long ad for it.
All right. Mount Ararat.
Right.
Shall I start with what is my favorite thing that Kent said?
Yes.
That the Armenians call it this, which is totally a reliable translation because all Kent Hovind translations are reliable.
And confirm.
Yeah, and this clearly proves this. And it's like the Armenians are one of the earliest adopters of Christianity. Like we aren't talking about like very recent past 2 centuries contamination of African or Asian groups of Christianity. No, we're talking about something that is like 2,000 years of Christian history.
Yeah. Well, actually,
that is hilarious.
Yeah, it's people don't actually realize that, but yeah, the Armenian region is one of the reasons it's among the first to adopt Christianity is because it's near modern day Turkey, which was essentially the center of early Christianity. Because pretty much all of those, you know all those letters in the New Testament that Paul is supposed to have written? And I think it's reasonable attribution. I don't actually think very many of them are not by him. Some of them probably aren't. But anyway, yeah, pretty much all those cities that he names, like Thessalonica or Colossia, yeah, those are all Anatolian cities. And Anatolia is the ancient Greek area that is now pretty much Turkey.
Thessalonica?
Thessalonica?
That's in Greece.
Is it?
Thessalonica is
Oh,
in
yeah, you're
Greece.
right, it is. Yeah. But still, many of the, and also when you hear about like the travels of Paul or things like that, yeah, they're all in and around that region until he gets off in towards like Rome. Because eventually, you know, he goes to Rome and dies there. But yeah, Anatolia and the surrounding regions are the areas with the oldest centers of Christianity. Although also, interestingly enough, India also has some of the oldest Christian groups. The Indian Christian groups that were not brought there by Europeans go back probably at least about 1700 years, and they claim to go back closer to 1900 years. So, the interesting fact is that Christianity has been in India about as long as it's been in, say, Spain. Yeah. People don't know that, but yeah. A weird little fact about Christian geography.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead, Dakota.
Yeah, like I'm not exactly an expert, but I'm pretty sure when Kent has his slideshow showing the Ark burials, aren't like a couple of pictures for completely different supposed Ark finds?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There have been so many findings of the Ark.
Well, like not only the different ones, but like the ones he specifically includes in his slideshows look distinctively different.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not all the same.
Split second, yeah.
But like the thing on that is, which is what I was going to bring up next, is that like every picture he showed of supposed Ark was like, yeah, this is the rock that the mountain is made out of. Well, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just more rock. Yeah. All right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on a quick 4-minute intermission because I need a refill on my drink because it is almost 8 o'clock p.m. and it is still 106 Fahrenheit here. We hit an even 45 Celsius here today.
Yeah. 45 communist units. That's impressive.
45 units. That is
over 40 Celsius.
That is 113 freedom units.
Yeah, I'm in a cold snap, so
hey, did you see the
beautiful here? I feel so sorry for you.
Hey guys, we're going on the intermission real quick.
Close.
So we'll be back in 4 minutes.
Like 10 seconds?
Oh, okay, fine.
10 seconds. So Dakota, without going further, we're reasonably close geographically, and the last few days have been just gorgeous for me.
Oh,
it's been great.
Yeah, my window is open, fan blowing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I feel sorry for
and
Dapper.
can I just say, I will say, I am in New Jersey because Ken like freaking doxed me first things on. Not that I keep my identity secret, but he was just like, "Here's this dude." But I will say that Dapper, if the desert ever becomes a little much, New Jersey was just ranked the best state correctly because New Jersey is the effing best state.
Two counters.
When you come to New Jersey.
Two counters. One, it smells a little bit.
That's false. That's only when you land at Newark Airport. Once you leave Newark Airport, it doesn't smell anymore.
Yeah, I can confirm.
Other
Dakota smells pretty
knows.
localized.
Other counterpoint. While there are a few months where it gets excessively hot, my knee.
It also gets cold.
It does. Well, it gets cool, but my knee has never complained less since the injury that made it my bad knee than since I've been living here. So
New Jersey winters not fun. Fair
yeah.
Fair
All right. So here comes the intermission. I have everyone muted, so even if you try, you can't interrupt it. Here it goes.
Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Ojira desu ka?
Sorry, I did not mean to replay my intro video, but I always forget to turn it off whenever I switch away from the scene. So, yeah. Great, wonderful production values getting here on the Dapper Dino channel. Welcome back, Dakota. Dan is
Welcome back.
currently stepped away, and unfortunately, David Neff had to step out of here, but that's okay. We're going to keep going for at least a little bit longer. So, did any of you have any other thoughts about the debate that you didn't get to share yet?
I have a few things.
Okay.
I want to finish the my thought on what Ken brought up on the Ararat, but I kind of want to wait for Dan to get back on that. So
Well, then, Dakota, why don't you go ahead and give something?
The heat problem is something that I love because it's not just one heat problem, it's about 6 or 7 different heat problems all stacked on top of each other. And I did enjoy how Kent would say, the temperature cluster of the globe was 72 degrees. And Dan would mention another heat problem. And Kent would go, okay, it was 73 degrees now.
Yeah, every
then
heat problem you mention, he goes up a
Dan
degree
added
Fahrenheit.
Another heat. Okay, there's this other heat problem you could add into that. And Kent Hovind went,
1 degree.
well, okay, 74 degrees now.
And 1 degree Fahrenheit, too, which is...
come on.
Yeah, because
Learn
the
Celsius,
expansion
nerd.
of the atmosphere doesn't do diddly because atmosphere is a terrible heat insulator, and when you're comparing to the temperature of water and all of the continental plates heating up, it doesn't do anywhere near enough.
What's the, I don't know the answer to this question, I literally just thought of this, but what's the specific heat of the atmosphere at sea level?
Oh, that is a...
Not much.
Not much, right? So how much would you have to expand the atmosphere to handle the trillion hydrogen bombs, right? Like that, like, dude, you're telling me this is a solution. Do the math. And then he ended up just caving and saying he believes it because of faith. And it's like, fine, but you're invoking a miracle, and then I'm done.
So the nominal value used for air is about 1 kilojoule per kilogram. So basically 1 joule per gram, which is your base every joule.
1,000
you're-
times. Is that 1,000 times lower than water?
Joule, no, because it converts to joule per kilogram roughly, which is roughly the same as water. However, air is significantly less.
This is just what I got. Let's see.
Kilojoule, yeah, because that's 1,000 and 1,000,
Right,
and
yeah, it's 1,000.
water
right.
is a joule per cubic centimeter,
Oh, but it's less
which
dense.
is a gram.
But it's less dense.
Because it takes up all that extra air, which is
right. So so a kilogram of air takes up a ton of space compared to a kilogram of water.
But Dan, what if it's compressed under an ice canopy that's about a mile high?
Dude, I didn't even.
doesn't work because here's one of the tiny
Then
bits
where
where I
did the
actually
ice
apply.
canopy come
Ice
from?
canopies, because if you approximate an arch and you want to support it, the weight at the end, the internal pressure to support it, has to equal the weight of the thing pulling down.
No.
And
It was but Dakota, it was floating in the sky.
Because
which
magnetism.
means it's an arch spanning the entire diameter of the Earth. So you can essentially simplify it into 2 arches on either side pressing against each other, and so its entire internal pressure is equal to the entire weight of the whole thing squeezing inwards. So every square centimeter of the entire global ice sheet needs to support the weight of the entire ice sheet.
The rest of it, because if I understand it right, not an engineer. Well, I did work for a traffic engineer for a bunch of years in college, so
There you go.
I could do a reasonable.
By Kent's standards, that makes you an engineer.
Look, you need me to do a traffic count and come up with an optimal configuration for a traffic light intersection in New Jersey and time that light optimally. I can do that. But
Interesting
that's not
skill.
useful for the ice canopy. But Dakota, just see if I understand you. What you're saying is it's almost like an eggshell, where the eggshell itself is extremely strong and can bear way more weight than you would think. But if there was any single point anywhere in that approximately sphere, it's not a sphere, but approximately sphere, if there's a single point that cannot bear the weight, then it just, and then it all breaks down.
And to specify, yes, it can support a ridiculous amount of weight. The ridiculous amount of weight is significantly under anything, in which case the ice canopy is experiencing. So you're quite a few magnitudes off. I did the math somewhere. I think it's in a random Google Doc somewhere. But yeah, if you do the math of the ice canopy sheet, the amount in any square, by a square meter is ridiculous. And that only accounts for like the middle bit around the equator where everything's could be in geosynchronous orbit. If you get near the poles, and you no longer have the central force, so it's pure pressure.
Also,
no matter what dynamic you pick, the equator and the poles are experiencing two completely different forces.
It would have to be. You would have to have a weird shape like those tops that kids play with that are symmetrical top and bottom, but it would have to extend infinitely as you got to the poles, if I understand it right.
Roughly.
Also,
not quite roughly, not quite infinite, but yeah, you would have to have absolutely wonky shape.
Also, if you're in geosynchronous orbit, you are nowhere near close enough to compress the atmosphere enough that releasing it allows you to dissipate the heat. Because geosynchronous orbit is way the hell out there.
Here's another great one. You literally cannot put a sphere in orbit around anything if it's surrounding the thing, because we've known this all the way since Newton. Newton figured out how much gravity does a body feel on the inside of a hollow sphere from the sphere. The answer is zero. They are not gravitationally linked at all, because basically what happens is as you get closer to, say, one wall, the vector sum of all of the gravity from the other side, which is now a much larger mass, sums out to zero with the gravity from the close wall that you're approaching. So there's no net gravitational force, which means if you surround the Earth with a sphere, the instant either of them has even the slightest variation in their orbit around the sun, they crash into each other.
Can we... So, two questions. Well, an observation and a question. One, I just want to appreciate that the four of us four nerds sitting here, are trying to make sense of what Kent Hovind said a couple of hours ago. Like, as though there is math that will make it work and it's worth evaluating.
Oh, it's not at all.
And look, as somebody who is like, my whole shtick on YouTube is like, I'm going to take this bonkers claim and treat it as serious, and we're going to like actually evaluate the population genetics of it. Like, I get that. Like, but this is another level of like, we are trying to figure out the physics of how would you have an ice canopy surrounding the entire world that could, because remember, it's not just the static ice canopy, it's an expanding ice canopy that expands exactly when needed to dissipate the heat from the fountains of the deep when the flood happens.
Convenient.
So I want to appreciate
I want to say something on that, dude.
Appreciate that.
Dude, Kent thinks it's kept up by magnetic force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
his reasoning for this is like ice 4 is like weakly paramagnetic or something, and it's like, okay, but this is ice 1 unless you have really good reason to tell me that it's not going to be ice 1.
Well, the issue is, even if to get those types of ice superstructures, the inner and outer edges are still going to be boiling off.
Yep.
If you're trying to approach that sort of...
Well, I love his counter. His counter is space is cold. And the answer is no. Space doesn't really have a defined temperature because it can't.
Right.
And if you're receiving solar radiation, that's going to warm you, because what are those photons doing if not hitting atoms and exciting them?
Speaking of photons, you get more than about a meter of ice in any above the Earth. That blocks all the solar radiation.
And that means that it's all absorbed by the ice, which means the ice is going to heat up.
Yeah.
And even not accounting the ice heating up, the pressure differential, so the pressure, it's going to be steaming off into a vacuum.
I want to make a comparison. So, assuming this ice canopy magically works and that you have this super pressurized Earth, you've basically got is a pressure cannon, the pressure container of a pressure cannon. And it will explode if you could do the pressure high.
Because this is the thing. The math we're trying to roughly approximate is the exact same sort of is the far end of ridiculous of sci-fi superstructure math. Dyson sphere. It's the ridiculous end of Dyson sphere style math.
Yep.
But
Dyson spheres are more reasonable than the math that the ice canopy is.
And by the way, Dyson spheres, not going to happen. Dyson Swarms, maybe.
Possible.
So-
yeah, I personally like the Topopolis because it's just you make a O'Neill cylinder and just stick several thousand of them in line.
So this is what I was trying to get Kent to do during the debate, though, when I was just like, okay, you don't agree with Walt Brown. What is your number? Like, you're saying he is wrong. In order to say number X is wrong, you must have a different number Y, in mind, right? Because if you don't have an idea of what the correct number is, if someone else throws out a number, you have no basis for saying that number is right or wrong if you don't have an idea of what the correct number is. So repeatedly during the debate, I was like, okay, you don't agree with Walt Brown. You don't agree with the rate project. Fine. What is your number and how does this work? And I hope it was clear to everybody that there is no, as we're fond of pointing out, there is no model, there's no mechanism, there's no math, there's nothing. It's the emperor has no clothes, the foundation is sand, whatever metaphor you want to use. Like, it's just ad hoc rationalization. Like, it's fine.
So,
and
for $5 from Rodent No Last Name, we have if the ice was almost absolute zero, wouldn't it start to freeze the atmosphere, literally liquefying the air? So actually, that's a good question. And so the problem there becomes you have to basically try to figure out what is the actual specific heat capacity of an ice canopy versus the actual amount of thermal energy in the atmosphere, because it is possible for things to be very close to absolute zero and then to be put, next to things that are not very close to absolute zero and not have the effect of, basically freezing the entire thing. So it's sort of like, you can think, so liquid nitrogen is actually not super close to absolute zero, but it's much closer than anything else you're likely to come in contact with in your daily life, right? If you put a drop of liquid nitrogen on your table, you're going to get a cold spot in your table, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know how to answer that, because I would need to know the mass of the ice sphere, its actual real temperature, and then I would need to know the temperature of the atmosphere and its mass, and I would need to know so many things that I don't even know where to begin with that calculation.
Well, the thing is, with the parameters,
you could do
answers to all those questions, you can do the math and show that it doesn't work. If you have geysers erupting everywhere, you vaporize the surface of the planet.
Yeah. One of the great things is the flood of Noah, as described by creationists, wouldn't result in a bunch of water on the Earth's surface. It would result in a bunch of plasma frying everything.
Right. And there was a debate a couple months ago. Who participated in it? I'm gonna take all kinds of stuff from people because I can't remember who participated in it, but this person, who was it? It wasn't Godless Engineer. Who was it? It was somebody participated in this debate, and they were talking about this exact thing with the plasma, with the flood and everything. And somebody brought up that the opponent, and I forget who was participating on both sides, but they brought up that the temperature comes down by a significant margin within like 36 hours or 3 days or whatever it is. And the response from the anti-flood person was great. So you go from plasma to on fire to merely on fire after 72 hours.
Yay, we're all saved.
Congratulations.
We saved the SpongeBob.
As though that solves the problem. Going from plasma on the surface of the planet to merely the temperature of a temperature above the combustion point of wood solves the problem.
You just got to think about it conceptually. Like, imagine someone's like, I got an offer for you. I'm going to leave you on the surface of the sun for 3 days, and then I'm going to toss you in a furnace. But you're only on the surface of the sun for 3 days, and then you're getting into a nice, cool furnace.
After the first 9 seconds, I don't think I'm going to care what happens.
Yeah.
Look. Here's the final thing. If the entirety of Earth's surface was bathed in plasma for a single second, everything would be dead.
Yeah, say goodbye. Your skin's gonna slough off at least.
You're well past the point where any of your math makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. That at that point, like physics that you know and love in everyday life just stops working. Like, how long does it take you to
I had friends, even with math that does make sense. you were discussing you use a broom to sweep in front of you, and whenever the broom gets cut by the invisible knife, you know there's a leak in the steam vent. Like, that is math within our bounds of understanding of high pressure steam, and anything involved in creationism is so many orders of magnitude beyond
Yeah.
that invisible knife that can cut brooms
Actually,
off.
that's
Here's
an
a fun
important
thing.
point.
Here's
go
a
ahead.
fun thing. When you heat things up to a plasma, you actually can't set things on fire because the electrons have been stripped away from the nuclei, and it requires interactions between the electrons of various atoms. So oxidization, you can't even do it. It's so hot, fire can't be a thing anymore.
Too hot for fire, and that's an important point. Is that we're not talking about like a 90-degree day versus 100 Fahrenheit. I'm talking Fahrenheit. We're not talking about a 90-degree day versus 120-degree day.
Even you go
versus
Celsius, we're still not
140-degree
talking
day.
about that.
Right. Well, yes. Right. But in Celsius, we're not talking about 40 versus 50 versus 60, right? We're talking about how many zeros are you going to add to that number? Are you adding 2 zeros or 3 zeros or 4 or 5 or right? We're talking orders of magnitude that are not just outside the survivability range of humans, but are outside the survivability range of planets, right? We're not, the amount of energy involved is just, and we're going to argue, and like I'm guilty of this because I just spent an hour and a half arguing with Kent right about this. But like, and we're going to entertain the notion that a wooden boat could survive this.
Yeah,
we're talking the kind of thing that threatens the structural integrity of a planet.
It's one of those things where it's like, once you get over like the melting point of tungsten, you know things are bad.
Mm-hmm.
What's the melting point for tungsten? I don't know.
It's
4
it's up
kc.
there. Yeah, it's up there. It's one of the harder.
That's a lot.
To melt.
That's
but
a lot.
Like you're easily getting past that with this. You at 2K, you're getting past the melting point for most rock.
Yeah, its melting point is 3,422 Celsius, and it boils at 5,555 Celsius.
Can I point out a comment in the chat? It's not a super chat, but I think this is exactly right, and it references XKCD, which makes me happy. I like it. This is from Silver Harlow. Says, I like how XKCD put it. Solar temperature is such that you stop being chemistry and become physics.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which, exactly. We're talking about the surface of the Earth that stops being biology. It blows straight past chemistry, and now we're just dealing with like physics on the surface of the Earth. And there are supposedly 8 people that survive the surface of the Earth just being physics. And within 300 years after that, in between which an ice age occurs, all extant biodiversity exists.
Yep.
Look, I figured it out. The gopher wood is actually just necrodermis, and no, it wasn't Necron. It's simple.
Yeah, there you go. That does have problems with the whole
arc.
Yeah, that your idea of TD has problems with the later reproduction of
that's simple.
organisms.
That's simple. Just make some new ones.
Yeah,
that's all you need to do.
All right, guys. Well, we're coming up on about an hour and a half, and I don't really think we need to go a huge amount longer than that.
Wait, Dapper, may I finish the air route thing because we got sidetracked?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I've gone over my favorite thing Kent said as well as the obvious thing. Let's go over the dumbest. Iron rivets. Tell me, when is the flood supposed to have happened?
4400 BC. I know that one.
Yes.
Yep.
And would you like to know when the
I'm an
Iron Age
atheist
started?
SJW, so I say BCE.
Would you like to know when the Iron Age started?
Not then.
1200 BCE.
Yeah, it's not the same. That's different.
You 4400
years ago,
you might have been in the Bronze Age.
It was like 2400. Sorry, it was not. I was wrong.
Like 4,000 years ago, you may have been in the early Bronze Age, if memory serves. But no, you're not gonna have iron rivets.
Mm-mm.
And I do not accept advanced pre-flood technology. It's not in the Bible. It's complete apocrypha to the highest degree. It is nonsense. I don't care what you say. I do not accept it.
For anyone who's interested in this history, there is a absolutely phenomenal book. It's called 1177 BC. The year, I forget if it's the year civilization ended or the year civilization collapsed. It's something like that. It's about the late Bronze Age collapse, and it's fantastic. Couldn't put it down.
And it's all just the sea peoples. That's all you need to know.
Well, no, the book is by Eric Klein, who explains how it wasn't just the sea peoples. It was really good book.
That was
If
sort
you
of my
haven't read
point.
Dapper, if you haven't read that book, you in particular, because I know you would adore this book. You would really enjoy 1177 BC. And by Eric Klein, who's a really good writer, really engrossing. He talks about like marriage contracts and conflicts between like Samaria and Acadia and Egypt. It's fascinating. It's a really good read. And it's exactly that, right? So that's the late Bronze Age collapse, is like 1200 BCE. The flood is 1200 years before that. What are we doing with iron?
Yep. No.
Yeah.
The answer is no. All right. So,
No.
Dan, do you have
Really
any?
not.
Dan, do you have anything you want to plug on your channel? We already did a little bit, but let's do it formally.
Thank you for asking. So tomorrow, the flavor of the month, the creationist flavor of the month is the waiting time problem. A bunch of things have popped up in the last couple of months about the waiting time problem. So tomorrow on my channel, that's Creation Myths, we are going to talk about the waiting time problem. We're going to review a video from Dr. Rob Carter, and we're going to look at a paper from, God, I always forget the first author because it's someone I don't know, but then the other two authors are Beckley and Gauger. That's Gunter Beckley and Ann Gauger they're both Discovery Institute people. So we're going to talk about the waiting time problem. And Dapper, I think you might join us for that.
My plan is to join for that. My premiere will be ending before it starts, which
Fantastic.
is the thing.
Yeah, that was the plan. So
that's
please join. Whoever wants to join, email. We'll talk. But that's at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow. We're going to talk about the waiting time problem. I'm talking with Sal, our friend, which is still weird to say that, but like our friend Sal. We're going to talk next week. I think next Thursday we're going to do a thing. I think on his channel we're going to talk about phylogenetics and mutation versus substitution rates and time to most recent common ancestor calculations.
Cool.
I have Michael Behe. We don't have a date, but we're going to do, Michael Behe is going to come back on. We're going to talk either Darwin Devolves or Edge of Evolution. I think we're going to go in order and do Edge, and then down the road we'll do Darwin Devolves. So that's at some point, probably in July, I'm hoping. So I got stuff coming down the pike. I don't have specific dates on all of it, but I have interesting things coming down. And I'm really in particular excited for the upcoming, it's not just, so Sal and I are going to talk about phylogenetics, and then we're going to talk about other stuff. We have a couple things in line. We're going to kind of alternate venues. So I'm excited for those. And I'm really excited to talk to Michael Behe again, because for those of you that haven't seen it, I talked to him I think back in March, and we had a really good conversation about irreducible complexity. It was really, really fun. And Michael B, he's a good sport. He'll talk to people. He'll talk to anybody. Like some random dude on YouTube, and he'll talk to me. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him again. That's coming down the pike. Keep an eye out. Yeah, that's what's coming up.
Awesome. So I would say TD and Dakota plug, but you don't really have active channels, so.
Well, have we used our F-bomb?
We're not going to intentionally use it.
Don't.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm pretty sure we accidentally said one of the
use
words you can't say.
look, if you have to, use the good place substitutes. That's my go-to when,
Yeah.
when
I love that.
kids around. I'll drop a mother fork and shirt balls when if necessary.
I have one thing to say, which is that reptiles are indeterminate growers, thus dinosaurs are just big lizards. It's forking dumb.
Yep.
Really,
That was bad.
really,
That was bad.
really dumb.
Yeah.
And Kent
Alright.
keeps using it.
So for this channel, let's see. Well, of course, I'm almost certainly going to be on Dan's channel, so go watch me there. Which, by the way, Dan's channel is linked in the description, as is a channel for Kent Hovind. I'll let you take that for what it is. A channel for Kent Hovind is listed in the description, as is the original debate. But let's see. Then before that, tomorrow, I have my start of a new series, Canadian Young Earth Creationism, all about CMI Canada and the boys from the Great White North who are Young Earth Creationists. So that'll hopefully be fun. And then Saturday, I'm going to be having a discussion about whether birds are dinosaurs by someone who goes by Nicholas on YouTube, and that is a fairly recent development. Originally, I thought I was going to finish up my Spirit Science history, but a live discussion about creationism and taxonomy, I think that's a better thing to have. So basically, the next Saturday that I don't have something else to do is when I will do the Spirit Science history, because I mean, come on, it's a 10-year-old video by someone who has been confirmed by himself to have done a thing that rhymed with a grape. So it's not a high priority. Yeah. And for $4.99 by Vandelli 1998, this Saturday, RJ will be on my channel talking about American history, 5 p.m. EDT. Well, there you go. That should be fun. So, yeah, that's it. Of course, you know, the next Tuesday is going to be Kent with Bent. There's going to be more stuff on the next Thursday, and so on and so forth. So, I hope everyone here has a great night. Thank you so much for coming. I noticed a whole bunch of names that I am not used to seeing on here, so welcome to the channel. Please make sure that you hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you want to. And, yeah, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to do my outro video. Bye, everybody. I just want to take a moment to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. My patrons and channel members really help make this channel possible, and without them, this channel wouldn't exist. If you would like to support me, you can click the join link on this channel below this video, or you can click on my Patreon, link in the description, and pledge. On Patreon, there is an option for an annual subscription, which comes with a 10% discount. And joining the channel will give you access to my custom emojis. However, if a regular pledge isn't for you, I do have a merch store. And if monetarily helping out the channel isn't a thing you can do, every like, share, and